Hey everyone, welcome back to Videntis.com for another deep dive into the biggest political stories of the day. It's December 16th, 2024, and let me tell you, the news cycle is not slowing down one bit. But hey, that's why you're here, right? You're American news junkies, and we've got you covered.
Always happy to help break it all down.
So let's jump right into it with a headline that's been making waves. ABC News just settled a defamation lawsuit filed by none other than President-elect Trump. And get ready for this, the settlement amount is a jaw-dropping $16 million.
$16 million. Wow.
That's not just a slap on the wrist, that's a major shakeup for the media landscape.
It really is. And this isn't just about the money. This case could have a ripple effect across the entire industry.
So what happened exactly?
Well, the lawsuit stemmed from an on-air mistake by anchor George Stephanopoulos back in March. During a segment about the E. Jean Carroll case, he incorrectly stated that Trump had been found liable for rape. Now, the statement was quickly corrected, but that didn't stop the legal action from being taken.
Okay, so a mistake was made, retractions happened. It's not unheard of in the media world. But $16 million, that seems, well, a bit excessive, doesn't it?
It does, and that's what has a lot of legal experts and journalists worried. You see, this case involves a public figure with, let's just say, a history of using lawsuits against media outlets. And the sheer size of this settlement, coupled with the fact that media defamation claims have skyrocketed in recent years, has folks concerned.
So they're worried this could create a chilling effect on free speech. Basically, journalists might be less likely to cover controversial topics, especially those involving powerful people.
Exactly. They might be afraid of triggering these expensive, time-consuming lawsuits.
Especially when you consider that media defamation claims have jumped a staggering 278% since 2020.
That's right. And it's not happening in a vacuum. This all ties into the broader political climate where trust in the media is already pretty low.
Yeah, it seems like a vicious cycle. More lawsuits lead to less coverage, which then leads to even more distrust in the media.
Exactly, and it's a cycle we need to break.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of political shakeups, let's turn our attention to the Democrats. They're facing what some are calling an existential crisis after their loss to Trump in the 2024 election.
It was a tough loss for them.
Tough might be an understatement.
Yeah.
They lost 7 key battleground states, and their 20-year winning streak in the popular vote, gone.
Yeah, that's not something you bounce back from easily.
So what's going on inside the party? What's the root of this so-called identity crisis?
Well, there's a lot of finger-pointing and soul-searching going on. Different factions within the party are debating what went wrong and what direction to take now.
Is this about policy or strategy?
It's about both, but one of the central points of contention is the role of identity politics.
Okay, that's a term I heard a lot, but honestly, I'm not always sure what people mean by it.
Yeah, it can be a bit of a loaded term, but essentially it refers to political mobilization based on shared experiences of social groups. So things like race, gender, religion, sexual orientation.
So for Democrats, it's been a powerful way to advocate for marginalized communities and push for social justice.
Right, but now some within the party argue that this focus on identity has alienated certain voters and contributed to their losses.
Interesting. So it's not necessarily about abandoning social justice issues. It's more about finding a way to broaden the appeal of the message.
You got it. The question is, can Democrats balance their commitment to social justice with the need to attract a wider base?
It's a tough question, and there are some big names weighing in on this.
Oh, yeah. We're seeing this play out in real time with folks like Mondaire Jones and Barbara Lee pushing for a more inclusive approach, while others like Maya Wiley and Rahm Emanuel advocate for a more centrist strategy.
So it's a real internal struggle, trying to find that sweet spot, addressing real issues of inequality, but also making sure their message resonates with voters from all walks of life.
Exactly. And let's not forget the influence of figures like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and the Clintons. They still hold a lot of sway within the party, so their views on this will definitely shape the debate.
Absolutely. It's going to be fascinating to see how this all plays out. Now, before we wrap up this first segment, let's shift gears to a story that's sparking a lot of anxiety and intrigue. Unidentified drones. We're talking over 30 sightings in December alone, popping up near critical infrastructure, military bases, even nuclear power plants.
It's definitely raising eyebrows.
It's more than eyebrows. People are on edge. And honestly, I get it. The authorities seem to be struggling to get a handle on this.
It's a tricky situation.
So the big question, are these just hobbyists with high-tech toys? Or is there something more coordinated, maybe even malicious going on
This is
here?
a million-dollar question, and right now there aren't a lot of answers.
And that lack of information is fueling all sorts of speculation.
You can find all kinds of theories online.
Oh yeah, from foreign governments to corporate espionage, even aliens.
Just running the gamut.
But speculation aside, the fact that these drones are being spotted near such sensitive locations is a legitimate concern.
No doubt about it.
And the fact that they're so hard to track and intercept just adds to the mystery and the anxiety.
It's a stark reminder of how fast technology is evolving and the challenges that poses for security and law enforcement.
It's like we're constantly playing catch-up.
In some ways, yes.
Well, we'll have to dig into potential solutions and the implications of all these stories a little later. But for now, we're going to take a quick pause. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more on The Deep Dive here on Videntis.com. All right, welcome back to The Deep Dives on Videntis.com, where we're unpacking some pretty complex issues today. That's right, and before we jump too far ahead, I think it's worth circling back to those mysterious drones for a minute. Remember earlier we were talking about whether these are just hobbyists having fun or something more sinister at play.
Yeah, the who behind these drones is a big question mark right now.
And honestly, the lack of concrete info is feeding a frenzy online. I've seen some wild theories out there, everything from foreign governments
Oh yeah, I've seen those too.
to corporate espionage and even,
Aliens.
you said it, aliens.
I mean, hey, it's the internet. Anything's possible, right?
True, true. But jokes aside, even if we set aside the outlandish theories, the fact that these drones are popping up near sensitive sites like power plants and military bases is a real cause for concern.
Absolutely. It's definitely not something to ignore.
And the fact that they're so difficult to track and intercept only adds to the mystery.
It's a bit unsettling, right? It highlights how rapidly technology is changing and the challenges that creates for security.
It's like we're playing catch-up trying to figure out how to deal with this stuff.
In many ways, we are. Think about it. These drones are becoming increasingly sophisticated. They can carry heavier payloads, fly higher, and even operate autonomously.
So the potential for misuse is pretty significant.
Very much so.
Speaking of technology outpacing our ability to control it, let's go back to that ABC News settlement for a sec.
Okay, yeah.
It kind of highlights another challenge the media is facing. The sheer speed of information in this digital age.
Oh, absolutely. One mistake, one misstatement, and it's gone viral in seconds.
Even if it's corrected right away, the damage can already be done.
Exactly. It's a whole different ball game compared to the old days of print media. The traditional news cycle has been totally upended by social media and this constant 24/7 news churn.
And let's be real, you've got figures like President-elect Trump who are really good at exploiting these situations.
They know how to use social media to amplify their message and discredit their critics.
Even if those criticisms are based on factual errors, it's a tough landscape to navigate.
That's putting it mildly.
And it all feeds into that erosion of trust we were talking about earlier.
Right. People are skeptical of traditional media. And social media algorithms often prioritize things that are sensational or engaging rather than what's accurate.
It's like a recipe for misinformation and polarization.
Pretty much.
So what can we do about it? How do we protect freedom of the press, but also make sure information is reliable?
Well, it's a big question with no easy answers, but I think one important piece is media literacy. We need to learn how to evaluate information critically, how to spot bias, how to recognize credible sources.
It's like we need to develop a new set of skills for this digital age.
Yeah, kind of like information self-defense.
I like that. But it's not just on individuals, right? What about the role of government and tech companies?
Oh, they definitely have a part to play. We need stronger regulations to fight misinformation online. And social media platforms need to take more responsibility for the content they're hosting.
So it's a multifaceted problem that needs a multifaceted approach. Makes sense. Now let's switch gears back to the Democrats and their identity crisis. We talked about the tension between moderates and progressives. But there's another layer to this, something I think is really important, the generational divide.
Oh, you're absolutely right. There's a definite disconnect between the old guard of the Democratic Party and the younger, more diverse generation that's rising up.
And those two groups often have very different priorities, communication styles, even approaches to solving problems.
You've got folks like the Clintons and Rahm Emanuel who came up in a different political world. They're used to a certain way of doing things, making deals, focusing on incremental change.
But for younger Democrats, that can feel slow, out of touch.
Yeah, like it's not enough to address the urgent challenges we're facing.
And then you have figures like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ilhan Omar. They represent a new style of politics. It's bolder, more confrontational,
And definitely more progressive.
and they're not afraid to call out the establishment, even within their own party.
It's creating some friction, for sure.
But it's also bringing in new energy and ideas.
Exactly. It's a dynamic that's reshaping the Democratic Party and American politics as a whole.
So the big question is, can the party bridge this divide?
Can they find a way to harness the passion of the younger generation while also appealing to those moderate voters?
It's a tough balancing act.
No doubt.
Now, before we wrap up this deep dive, I think it's worth pointing out a theme that runs through all these stories: uncertainty. We're living in a time of profound uncertainty, both here in the U.S. and globally.
Yeah, that feeling is definitely in the air.
It's like the old rules don't apply anymore, and the future feels unpredictable.
It's fueling a lot of anxiety and division. We're dealing with rapid technological change, shifting political landscapes, all these complex global challenges.
It's a lot to process, and it's easy to feel overwhelmed. Welcome back to the Deep Dive here on Videntis.com for the final stretch of today's political roller coaster ride. We've covered media lawsuits, Democratic soul-searching, and even some unsettling drone activity.
A lot to unpack, for sure.
But amidst all this, one thing remains crystal clear. Knowledge is power, especially in uncertain times.
Absolutely. The more informed we are, the better equipped we are to navigate the challenges ahead.
So let's shift gears from problems to potential solutions. We've identified some pretty big hurdles facing the media: free speech, public trust, information overload. Where do we even begin to tackle all that?
Well, I think it starts with each of us, recognizing the role we play as consumers of information.
We can't just passively absorb everything we see online. We need to be more active,
Exactly. We need to become more discerning, more critical.
questioning sources, considering potential biases, seeking out different viewpoints.
It's easy to get stuck in echo chambers and filter bubbles, but breaking free takes effort.
It's like we need to become information detectives, carefully examining the evidence before drawing conclusions.
That's a great analogy.
And part of that means supporting quality journalism,
Absolutely.
subscribing to reputable outlets, donating to investigative nonprofits, calling out misinformation when we see it. Those actions might seem small, but they can make a difference.
They really can. Every little bit counts.
And let's not forget the power of our voices as citizens, contacting our elected officials, advocating for policies that protect a free press, holding those in power accountable. These are all vital tools in safeguarding democratic values.
They are. We can't just be passive observers. We have to participate.
We have agency, and we can use it to shape a better information ecosystem.
All right, let's pivot back to the Democratic Party and their ongoing identity crisis. This is about more than just internal politics. It's about the direction of a large part of the American electorate.
Yeah, it's a pivotal moment for them.
If you were advising them, where would you suggest they focus their energy to bridge that generational gap?
Honestly, I'd say listening is key.
Listening.
Yes, truly listening to the concerns of all their constituents: working-class voters, communities of color, young activists, everyone. Building a strong coalition starts with understanding the needs and aspirations of all those involved.
It's about finding common ground, building bridges instead of walls.
Exactly, and that's a lesson that applies far beyond just party politics.
It's a good life lesson in general. Speaking of bridges, or maybe safeguards in this case, let's circle back to those unidentified drones one last time.
Yeah, that story still feels a bit like a sci-fi movie, but it's very real.
And it's happening right now, so what can we do to feel a little less vulnerable in this rapidly evolving tech world? Well, awareness is a good first step. We need to learn about the potential dangers of this technology, whether it's intentional misuse by bad actors or just accidents.
Understanding the rules, knowing what to look for, reporting suspicious activity, it all helps.
It does, and on a larger scale, we need to push our elected officials to take this seriously.
Investing in countermeasures, strengthening regulations, holding violators accountable.
These are all critical steps towards ensuring our safety in the drone age.
It all comes down to staying informed, staying engaged, and refusing to be complacent. And that, my friends, is what the deep dive is all about.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
We're not just here to report the news, we're here to empower you with the knowledge and tools to navigate this complex world.
These are challenging times, no doubt, but there's also opportunity. By engaging with the issues, asking tough questions, holding those in power accountable, we can shape a better future.
A more just, equitable, and secure future for everyone.
Well said.
So keep those minds sharp, those voices strong, and never stop being curious. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and for all your political news and analysis, keep it locked right here on Videntis.com.